Hi, I'm Phil Harbottle, and this is my 12th video discussing 1950s British science fiction paperbacks. Now, we've been discussing how various publishers tried to cash in on the boom in science fiction in the early 1950s, but what of the originator of the craze, Vargo Statten? This series had commenced in the summer of 1950, and the first 8 titles issued, as we saw in an earlier video, had been bestsellers. But could their author, John Russell Fearn, keep up a steady supply of such novels? The answer was that he certainly could, and no less than 52 Vargo Statten books were to be published over the next 5 years. These were destined to be translated and published worldwide in France, Germany, Italy, Denmark, Norway, Turkey and Brazil. Here we see the reason. It's demonstrated in this iconic title, The Avenging Martian, published in January 1951 with a dynamic Ron Turner cover. This epic story was based on an 11,000-word novelette, originally published by Fearn in the January 1938 Astounding Stories. The following year, in a letter to the magazine, author Isaac Asimov shrewdly identified Red Heritage as one of the best stories of 1938. His judgment was verified when noted French author and anthologist Richard Nolien included Red Heritage in his first collection of Fearn's best stories in the French book Dimension Vargo Statten, recently published by the Black Coat Press. Also included in the book was another Vargo Statten novel, The Man from Tomorrow, aka A Stranger in Our Midst. Now, Fearn was well able to expand his novelette into the 40,000-word novel, The Avenging Martian, by adding additional plot twists. Its epic storyline ranges over many millions of years, following the beginning. Was in the Carboniferous period of Earth, in the remote past, into the near future. It details how ruthless Venusian super scientists build a giant force tubes that act like cosmic vacuum cleaners to transfer the air and water from Mars. There we see them, by artist Jack Binder. They act like cosmic vacuum cleaners, and they transfer the air and water from Mars to revivify their own dying planet. Now, the Martian race is all but wiped out, apart from a few survivors, led by scientist Jad Inikus, who plans an elaborate 2-part vengeance. First, he fires a remote-controlled missile with atomic explosive that blasts apart the then moon of Venus. He knows that the moon was infested with deadly plant spores, which are carried in the meteoric debris which bombards Venus. This was vividly illustrated in the magazine by artist Jack Binder, even if his illustration was actually printed upside down. There you see his signature. So the moon explodes and bombards Venus. Now, thriving in the stolen Venusian atmosphere, the spores quickly develop with billions of plants that emit not oxygen but deadly toxic gases, principally carbon dioxide. The plants multiply faster than it can be destroyed, and ultimately Venus's atmosphere will be poisoned and become the hell planet science knows today. But Jad knows that there will be survivors, and so he devises his second plan. After they've been adapted to Earth conditions, he sends his son and his pregnant wife to the primeval Earth by spaceship to continue the Martian race Adam and Eve style. The Earth is a primitive world populated by monsters, but also by a race of ape-man proto-humans, here illustrated in Ron Turner's cover picture. The two Martians are separated and captured by opposing tribes, and are fated never to meet again. The woman's child is born, but she dies soon afterwards. Her husband, by virtue of his superior intellect, eventually becomes the leader of the tribe that abducted him, and he takes an Earth mate to perpetuate his race. Both Martian children have issue, and so the Martian genes are assimilated into the human race. But Jad has ensured that the Martian racial memories and his plan of vengeance will be preserved, and by the laws of heredity and recessive units will eventually resurface in the far future, when someone will be born who will remember his ancient mission of vengeance to destroy any surviving Venusians. Like many of the Vargo Statten novels, The Avenging Martian was first translated into French by the Fleuve Noir, the Black River Press in Paris, as the Martien Vengeur. These appeared in the long-running Anticipation series, with striking covers by leading French illustrator Roger Branton. You just see his signature there. As you can see, Branton was greatly influenced by the Ron Turner originals in some cases, but in most instances, as in The Avenging Martian, was entirely his own design. The French editions were again translated into several foreign languages. Here we see the Portuguese edition, published by Technoprint in Brazil. These 3 issues were very successful. In fact, it was so successful that it was printed in 2 later editions, remaining in print for over 20 years. And in America, here we see an American magazine, the quality of The Avenging Martian was such that it was selected for reprinting in 2 complete science adventure books. The sister magazine of Planet Stories. It appeared in the spring 1953 issue. And the cover was by Kelly Freas, a famous American artist, which makes this a very collectible edition. Many years later, such had been the popularity of the French Anticipation series that in 1972, let's move these up a bit, there we go. In 1972, already a leading comics publisher created a long-running series of graphic novel versions in their Anticipation and Sidereal series. They adapted many of the best 1950s novels, including some 20 of the Vargo Statten and other Skyline novels by Ferranesi too. These were very attractively produced in 162-page editions, usually with an additional short story or article filling it up. However, where the publisher adjudged that the novel was outstanding, the adapters were instructed not to abridge any part of the novel, but let it extend into 2 separate graphic versions as parts 1 and part 2. The Avenging Martian was such a story, and here we see the publisher advising the readers that the novel was such quality that they couldn't abridge it, and they were extending it into 2 separate editions and inviting them to watch out for part 2. And this is part 2. These splendid editions are now quite rare, but they do turn up occasionally in Abe books. Here we can see the quality of the artwork, which was exceptionally good on this particular story. There we can see the cosmic vacuum cleaner in action, sucking up the air and water from Mars to transfer it to Venus. And here in part 2, there's a particularly brilliantly drawn sequence, which we'll see in a moment. I'll get to this. Yeah, there we see the Martian couple arriving on the primitive Earth, initially combating monsters, but eventually they are captured by the ape tribe, and his wife dies in childbirth. These splendid editions are quite rare, but they do turn up occasionally on ape books. Now, as regards Fern's original Skyen book, the last time I checked on ape books, there were just 6 copies available worldwide, and they were priced from £25 to over £50, plus hefty overseas postages. But there is a cheaper alternative. After I was bequeathed Fern's copyrights under the provision of his widow Carrie's will in 1982, I self-published a number of Fern's unpublished novels and reprinted some of his classic magazine stories. There's another one from Astounding, you can see. This was also a Vargo Statten novel later on. Now, during lockdown, I had time to look through my archives in storage, and I discovered this small cache of my old booklets. They included this facsimile reprint, The Survivor of Mars, reprinted from the American magazine, facsimile. And now, if anyone were interested, there's another one reprinting 2 of his stories from Tales of Wonder, with a Hans Bock illustration from the American reprinting of one of the stories. That's quite a nice little item. Now, if anyone was interested, I'd be happy to supply copies at just £5 plus postage at cost. Just send me your email for a quote. Whilst limited stocks last, as the saying goes.